Have you ever taken a moment to reflect on the origins of slavery? Let's journey back in time to ancient civilizations, where slavery was born. It was a time when societies accepted slavery as a norm, with war, debt, and punishment serving as its primary catalysts. This practice was not an anomaly of the modern world, but rather a deeply entrenched part of human history. Indeed, slavery was not a product of the modern world, but a practice deeply rooted in our history. Did you know that the Middle Ages and the colonial era marked significant milestones in the history of slavery? These periods saw the expansion of slavery in ways that were both shocking and devastating. During the Middle Ages, Europe was riddled with serfdom, a system that shackled people to the land they worked and the lords they served. It was a life of toil and hardship, with little hope for freedom. Meanwhile, in Africa, slavery was a widespread practice, deeply entrenched in the society's fabric. Slaves were seen as commodities, bought and sold in bustling markets. Then came the colonial era, bringing with it the transatlantic slave trade. It was a time of unimaginable human suffering. Millions of men, women, and children were torn from their homes and transported across the sea, forced to work in brutal conditions on foreign lands. The Middle Ages and the colonial era were dark chapters in our history, where humanity was lost in the pursuit of power and wealth. Can you fathom the courage it took to rise against the institution of slavery? Imagine the audacity, the sheer will, and the unyielding spirit that fueled the men and women who dared to challenge such a deeply entrenched system. They were the brave souls who led the abolition movements across the globe, turning the tide of history. In the United States, this fight for freedom culminated in the American Civil War, a brutal conflict that tore the nation apart. The war was not just about states' rights and economic interests, but it was fundamentally a war against the inhumane practice of slavery. And it was during this war that President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a landmark document that declared enslaved people in Confederate-held territory to be free. But the fight was not confined to the American shores alone. Across the Atlantic, the British abolitionist movement was gaining momentum. Figures like William Wilberforce and Olaudah Equiano used their voices and influence to bring an end to the British slave trade, leading to the Slavery Abolition Act of 1833. These are just a few examples of the numerous abolition movements that took place worldwide. Each one of them was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, to the belief that every person deserves to live a life of dignity and freedom. The fight for freedom was long and bloody, but it was a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Do you think slavery is a thing of the past? Think again. In the shadows of our modern society, a hidden tragedy unfolds every day. Slavery, despite our collective struggle to eradicate it, continues to persist. It's no longer about shackles and auction blocks, but takes on insidious forms like human trafficking, forced labor, and child labor. Imagine, as you are listening to this, there are an estimated 40 million people worldwide who are victims of this heinous crime. That's equivalent to the entire population of Canada. Among these, 1 in 4 victims are children forced into labor, robbed of their innocence. Women and girls account for nearly 3/4 of all trafficking victims, often coerced into the commercial sex industry. Every minute, someone is forced into servitude, stripped of their freedom. Remember, the fight against slavery is far from over. Slavery has not been eradicated, it has merely taken on new forms. It's a battle we must continue to fight, a sinister reality we should never ignore. So what can you do about it? It might seem like a daunting question, but each of us, in our own little way, can contribute to ending this heinous practice. Firstly, let's focus on awareness. Slavery is a hidden tragedy, often right under our noses. Educate yourself and others about the signs of modern slavery. Share your knowledge in your community, on social media, or even in casual conversations. Supporting survivors is another crucial aspect. Donate to organizations that help survivors regain their freedom and rebuild their lives. Volunteer your time and skills, if you can. Lastly, but importantly, advocate for stronger laws. Write to your local representatives, demanding stricter legislation and enforcement against human trafficking and forced labor. Encourage others to do the same. Remember, the fight against slavery is not just for activists or lawmakers. It's for all of us, because every person deserves freedom and dignity. Remember, every voice counts. Raise yours against slavery. Subscribe for more.